Hi, I'm Zeke, and today I'm going to show you a game that I played where I played e4 and they played d5, causing the Scandinavian defense. Okay, so I played e4 and they played d5, Scandinavian defense. I moved my knight to c3 and they pushed the pawn, attacking my knight. So I went here. A better move would have been to move the knight here because then the pawn is protecting it. But that's not what happened. So I moved the knight to e5 and they attack by going to a6. And I moved back here because there's no other spot for me to go. They moved to e5, creating a nice pawn structure, and I attack their back pawn. They protect their pawn, holding their pawn structure, and I go c4, developing my pieces. They go knight f6, developing their pieces, and I push the pawn. Now, they moved their queen out early in the game, and I want this pawn as much as possible. So I'm trying to get there, and I eventually take it later in the video because that's what's holding together their pawn structure, really. So they moved their bishop to e6, and I accept the trade. They take with the queen, and I castle. They castle. I take the trade here, and I move my knight to c4. They move their bishop to d6, protecting their pawn. I take the bishop, and they take the rook. I move to c4 because I can't really do anything. There's not really much that I want or can do. So I help make the pawn structure. They could have played en passant, and then I would have taken, and then I would have pushed the pawn after they did something. But that's not what happened. So I pushed the pawn, and then they moved the queen to e7. I pushed the b pawn to b3, and they moved there. I moved my queen to c1, getting ready to move my queen here and pin the rook to the queen. They moved their pawn 2 squares to f5, and I take, they take. Now they're thinking about getting ready for checkmate here, 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 and here, and queen take, checkmate. I go there, pinning the rook. They move there. I attack the rook. Can't take it because of the pawn. And they move their rook. I move my rook to e1. And what I want to do is stack these rooks so that I can take this pawn. So, they are trying to get checkmate. So they move their rook there. And I move my rook up according to plan, trying to get those rooks stacked. And they get ready for checkmate. Now there are two moves that I can do here. I could push this pawn, or I could move the knight here. This moves your piece back, so I didn't do that. I pushed the pawn, and they pushed the pawn. I took, attacking the queen. They took, and I took. That's how I took that pawn. Now they take, I take. They take that free pawn. Now, I pushed this pawn because I want to do sacrifice the queen and checkmate. Also, by pushing this pawn, it holds this square. And they did not take, they just did check. I think he's in a really bad position, so he just is sacrificing rooks to get checks in so that I don't do my sacrifice queen checkmate. So he checks, which was actually a split. against the rook, and here I move my king, and they move their queen to h3. I move back, and they check, and after I move here, they check, and I found a checkmate right there. Now, I'm going to show you something, and this is an analyze board. So back here, when they did these checks, I'm going to turn on the computer, and it says mate in 6. After they take, and I move, and they move, and I go there, everything's the same, except for if they went there, and my king can only go there, then their queen could go to c3, and I could go to d2 because that's my only move. And then there's checkmate with d2 checkmate. And the rook is protecting. Thank you for watching this video of the Scandinavian defense.